Chapter 671, Violet Devastation Sword Skill. Jian Wushuang is excellent when it comes to sword skill, but it doesn't mean his comprehension of the Tao is good. Palace Master Ming Xin poured out her words, but when she saw Jian Wushuang quickly break through the 17th, 18th, and 19th floor in an instant, she was struck dumb and the others were astonished as well. He is so fast. He was stuck on the 17th floor for a long time, wasn't he? How was he suddenly able to break through the 18th and 19th floor in the blink of an eye? The masters could not understand the sudden change. With only a strike on each floor, all the puppet fighters were defeated. Look at his sword. One of the vice palace masters suddenly cried out. The others immediately reacted to the voice and looked at the sword. They could see that all 10 puppet fighters on the 20th floor were diving towards Jian Wushuang aggressively. Then, almost at the same moment, Jian Wushuang made his move, which was followed by the release of an enormous amount of world energy. The floors that Jian Wushuang had passed were filled with dazzling sword light as his sword passed through the bodies of all the puppet fighters. He also cleared this floor with a single strike. How could this be possible? Palace Master Ming Xin's eyes were open wide and there was a look of horror on her face. His swordsmanship is so terrifying. From his strike, I can tell that he has comprehended up to the 3rd occult and is only a step away from reaching the 4th occult. His comprehension of the world Tao is surprisingly high. There's still more. Look. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Jian Wushuang. Under their watchful gazes, Jian Wushuang made it to the 21st floor, on which the puppet fighters were much more powerful than those on the 20th floor. This time, he could not end the battle as quickly as before, but he was still able to overpower his opponents. His sword rushed, surrounded by sword light and carrying an air of killing intent. The mighty power of the world Tao and slaughter Tao were being completely demonstrated by his swordsmanship. Under such powerful attacks, the 10 puppet fighters were forced to retreat. Oh my God, his comprehension of the slaughter Tao is no less than that of the world Tao. Luo Yong and Donga may have reached a higher level in the Tao than Jian Wushuang, but that is just in a single Tao. Jian Wushuang has comprehended the 3rd occult in both the world Tao and slaughter Tao. What's more, his talent in sword principle is really impressive. I agree. Overall, I think he is more powerful than Luo Yong and Donga. These masters were experienced and knowledgeable, so they had a general idea of how powerful Jian Wushuang was. Because of that, they could not deny that in terms of cultivation in sword principle and the Tao, Jian Wushuang was the best among all 20 of the challengers. They believed that Jian Wushuang would actually be able to make it past the 25th floor, while Luo Yong and Donga would probably have to stop on the 25th floor. Monster! This boy has greatly advanced in his comprehension of the Tao over the last 2 years after entering our sect. He is a real super genius. Previously, we thought that he was being conceited, but it seems like we misunderstood him. Complex feelings overwhelmed the masters. Even up till this moment, Xianxia had remained silent. Jian Wushuang's performance on the 9th Heaven Road was within his expectations, so it was not that surprising. Jian Wushuang continued to break through and challenge higher floors. Just as the masters had expected, it did not take him much time to pass these floors and reach the 25th floor at a glance. Jian Wushuang could tell that every puppet fighter on that floor was as powerful as the weakest divine realm experts. After exchanging several moves with them, he realized that the puppet fighters' attacks were more skillful and fierce than before. The puppet fighters surrounded him from all directions. Shoop! 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 A net of spear shadows moved towards him and completely surrounded him. He exerted the power of his sword soul to the extreme and moved forward as if he had become a sword himself. Meanwhile, his heart-killing sword struck out continuously, causing countless sword shadows to sweep through the surroundings. He easily deflected all the spear attacks that were directed towards him. The puppet fighters on this floor are superior to all the ones I've fought before, regardless of whether it's in power, speed, or skill. Not only that, they have good teamwork. It seems like I'll have to rely on some special methods to defeat them. I'll break through with pure power. Jian Wushuang's eyes sparkled. The very next moment, he withdrew the heart-killing sword, took a step backwards, and held the sword with both hands. An overwhelming sword essence continued gathering in the blade as he released a burst of killing intent. The entire space seemed to completely freeze at that moment. Violet Devastation Sword Skill. Chapter 672. Peak Battle Strength. Swoosh! A dazzling and splendid bright purple light lit up the sky. Behind it was a terrifying killing intent sought to destroy everything. Jian Wushuang held his sword up with both hands and swung it at two puppet fighters rushing toward him. The puppet fighters' spears also struck out to meet the sword. Clang! Clang! Two crashes were heard, one after the other, and the spears were shattered. However, Jian Wushuang did not stop attacking them and finally defeated them. Jian Wushuang then moved toward the rest of the puppet fighters. Strike after strike, he displayed a brilliant swordsmanship that the puppet fighters could barely fight back against. A short while later, he passed the 25th floor and moved on to the next one. The senior experts in the hall all looked amazed when they saw Jian Wushuang's performance on the 25th floor. His power is so formidable. The skill he displayed just now should be a superior rank 3 secret skill. Wow, even those who have comprehended the fourth occult, like Luo Yong and Donga, can't create a skill at that level, but Jian Wushuang actually did it. His cultivation in sword principle is amazingly high. One could create secret skills based on their comprehension of the Tao and weapons. Jian Wushuang might be weaker than Luo Yong and Donga in comprehending the Tao, but his cultivation of sword principle was far above theirs. That was why he could create the superior rank 3 secret skill, Violet Devastation Sword Skill. It was the most powerful move that he could currently perform. On the 26th floor of the 9th Heaven Road, Jian Wushuang faced 10 puppet fighters again, that were even more powerful than the previous ones. The moment the 10 puppet fighters started moving, Jian Wushuang was suppressed. They attacked him with impressive teamwork and forced him to continuously retreat. He is losing ground. Of course he is. Every puppet fighter on this floor is as powerful as a novice Divine Realm expert, and only someone above the level of an intermediate Divine Realm expert could withstand their attacks. He is only in the skyscraping realm, so it's already very impressive for him to make it this far. The 26th floor will be his limit. The experts sighed. Previously, they all thought that Jian Wushuang could make it to the 25th floor at best and that the 26th floor was beyond his reach. Xianxia had not shown any feelings towards Jian Wushuang's situation yet. He just stared at him in silence while thinking, "Boy, show me how far you can go." Under the puppet fighter's powerful attacks, Jian Wushuang was like a drowned mouse. "It looks it's time for me to go all out," he thought while narrowing his eyes. Then, in the next instant, there was a sudden increase in his physical strength. "Piss off." He struck at the puppet fighter in front of him and forced it down, causing the puppet fighter to hit the ground and roll across the floor. Jian Wushuang then turned his sword towards the other puppet fighters and struck out at them like lightning. Clang! 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 After several sounds of metal colliding against metal, he beat them back a bit. Violet Cataclysm Skill. Jian Wushuang's eyes sparkled and a purple light lit up the sky again. He forced another 3 puppet fighters to retreat. In just a moment, the 10 puppet fighters surrounded him were all beaten back. "I have been suppressing my power ever since I came to the eternal world. Not even once have I ever exposed my power to others during the last 2 years in the ancient sect, until this moment. It feels good to be able to go all out after so long." Jian Wushuang clenched his fists and felt the power surging within him. He had a flawless foundation and could release more power than others at the same level as him. Because of this, his body was stronger than other skyscraping realm experts. Overall, this made him more powerful than others. Even when compared to divine realm experts, he was just a little bit weaker. He had restrained his power this whole time, even when he fought with Gong Chao in the Firmament Territory Feast. Only now, on the 26th floor of the 9th Heaven Road, did he finally show his full power. For fear of arousing other suspicion, I had hidden my real power from the prying eyes and ears at the Firmament Territory Feast. But now, things are different. I have to show more power so I can get more resources from the sect. And the people here won't know that my incredible power is because of my foundation. To be precise, they won't be able to tell that I have a perfect foundation. Before taking part in the sect competition, Jian Wushuang had decided that he would do his utmost in order to obtain more resources from the sect. Come on. Jian Wushuang was thrilled. He held his sword in one hand and gazed at the puppet fighters with his overwhelming battle intent. Kill! He shouted and dived forward. The 10 puppet fighters rushed toward him as well. An instant later, he was locked in an intense fight with them again. However, this time, he had the upper hand. When he attacked, there was a terrifying power behind every one of his exquisite moves. He knocked his opponents away with the full exertion of his power, his comprehension of the Tao, and his skill. He was at the peak of his battle strength. Chapter 673, Jian Wushuang's Limit. Bang! Jian Wushuang's sword collided with the weapon from one of puppet fighters and forced the puppet downward. Then, he drew back his sword and quickly stabbed towards the puppet's throat. He was so fast that the puppet couldn't completely defend itself and got hit. 1 defeated, but there are still 9 left. Jian Wushuang smiled. Several minutes ago, he was being overpowered by the puppet fighters and could barely fight back. But, now that he had decided to no longer restrain his power, he could battle them with ease. Things continued on in a good direction. One after another, Jian Wushuang quickly defeated the rest of the puppet fighters. Finally, he cleared the 26th floor. The senior experts were startled by the sudden change that occurred between Jian Wushuang and the puppet fighters. What's going on? His power greatly improved. How could he release so much more power in such a short amount of time? The experts were confused. They had thought that the 25th floor was Jian Wushuang's limit and that there was no way he could pass the 26th floor. So, what they had just witnessed was completely beyond their expectations. He is only in the skyscraping realm, yet he is as powerful as a divine realm expert. I think it should be because of his strong body. He must have practiced some secret skills to strengthen his body, which allowed him to exert more power than other skyscraping realm experts. Palace Master Destruction cried out in astonishment. His strong body. The experts stared at Jian Wushuang closely, no longer paying any attention to the other disciples. At that moment, they were concerned with Jian Wushuang the most. As they continued to watch, they realized it was true. Jian Wushuang had made it this far by relying on his body. Palace Master Xianxia, is it true that Jian Wushuang has practiced some secret skills to strengthen his body? Palace Master Mo Dao asked Xianxia. The experts all immediately looked toward Xianxia. I don't know. Xianxia shook his head. His answer surprised the experts, who expect him, as Jian Wushuang's master, to know every one of his disciples' skills. I really have no idea about that, Xianxia added. There are some secret skills in our sect that can be used to strengthen one's body, but our sect regulations limit access to those skills. Only divine realm experts are allowed to practice them, and I'm a man of principle. Since Jian Wushuang has not reached that level, there is no way I have given any of those skills to him. As I see it, he already possessed this skill before entering our sect. After hearing that, all the experts were lost in thought. They believed in Xianxia and knew that he would not lie to them. None of the information from the Firmament Territory Feast revealed that Jian Wushuang possessed this level of strength. This boy is really cunning. He has hidden his real power from us this whole time, even during the Firmament Territory Feast. I reckon if it was not because he wanted to get more resources, he would not have exposed his power to us even now. He is really patient and determined. He truly lives up to his fame as a genius. When those experts looked at Jian Wushuang again, their eyes became frenzied. Without question, they all wanted to have him, a genius with such great talent and a determined mind, as their disciple. He has passed the 26th floor, so I'm curious if he can pass the next floor as well, someone suddenly said. In fact, all the experts were looking forward to seeing what Jian Wushuang did next. They changed their mind. In the beginning, they believed that Jian Wushuang would fail on the 18th floor, which turned out to be wrong. Later, they believed that the 25th floor was his limit, but he had already made it to the 26th floor. At this point, They finally realized that they should give up predicting his performance because they did not know whether he had any trump cards remaining. On the 27th floor of the 9th Heaven Road, Jian Wushuang was facing an even greater pressure than before. He had made a full use of most of his advantages when fighting with the puppet fighters on the 26th floor, and it had still been hard for him to defeat them. Now, facing an even more difficult challenge, the 10 powerful puppet fighter on the 27th floor, he was not sure if he could succeed again. Just fight and see what result is. His eyes were filled with battle intent as he made his move and brought out a second figure that shared his exact appearance. He revealed his 2 original bodies. Swish! Swish! The world body and slaughter body charged at the 10 puppet fighters at the same time, with each body taking on 5 puppets. In no time, the 27th floor was embroiled in 2 intense battles. Doppelganger secret skill. The experts narrowed their eyes at the scene, but they were not surprised. They had already heard about Jian Wushuang displaying this skill in the Firmament Territory Feast. Chew! A spear attack that was targeting Jian Wushuang's world body quickly drew near. The world body met the spear with a sword and the sound of the loud collision echoed out. Before the world body could regain his balance, 2 more puppet fighters drew near him and attacked. Seeing that, he hurriedly moved and dodged the attacks. The world body was completely suppressed, as was the slaughter body, who was fighting at the other side. Though the situation was bad, Jian Wushuang remained calm. Chapter 674. Condensing Sword Heart. Jian Wushuang became even calmer during this crisis. He was able to do this because of the many experiences he had while adventuring for all those years in the ancient world. Swish! As his 2 original bodies merged into one, the 10 puppet fighters immediately rushed towards him while slashing at him from all directions. However, he was not afraid at all. At that moment, everything in front of his eyes seemed to disappear, except for his sword, as if only he and the sword were the only things in the world. A sword is like a human being. It has its own feelings. Let your heart become one with it and it will follow your heart, moving as you intend it to. Xianxia's words echoed in Jian Wushuang's mind. Let your heart become one with it and it will follow your heart. As he continually repeated this to himself, there was a gradual change in his swordsmanship. Not only that, his sword soul, which had been floating quietly in the sea of consciousness this whole time, suddenly quivered violently and released a surge of power. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes and focused on sensing it, even though he was currently being attacked by 10 puppet fighters. Even during all that, he did not stop moving and he even became swifter, enabling him to slowly increase his resistance against the puppet fighters. And, all of this was thanks to the insight into sword principle he gained a moment ago from the frenzied attacks raining down on him from all these puppet fighters. As a result, his sword soul began to release an enormous power, which slowly flowed towards his sword heart. It was hard to imagine, but Jian Wushuang was experiencing all these things at such a crucial moment, yet it all made sense. He had been learning the sword principle for so long, even while he was still in the ancient world, building his sword soul up until it reached the highest level. Also, during the last 2 years in the ancient sect, he had been cultivating at an amazing speed due to Xianxia's help. However, he had gradually reached a bottleneck. Therefore, just as Xianxia had said, with so many accumulations, what he needed was a spark of insight. That spark of insight finally surfaced on the 27th floor. On the previous floor, he had gone all out, which relaxed him. Then, on the next floor, he had been forced to endure an unbearable pressure, which put him under an incredible amount of stress. While facing the contrast between these 2 feelings, he was finally able to break through the bottleneck. It was completely natural and straightforward. On the 27th floor, the 10 puppet fighters had used every method they had to attack Jian Wushuang. However, they were still repelled by him. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang finished condensing his sword heart, which meant that he could finally open the door and step into the real word of sword principle. Before that moment, he was still just an apprentice, even though he possessed such a strong sword soul, because condensing a sword heart was the first step everyone must take to enter that world. As of now, Jian Wushuang had finally arrived at a vaster road of cultivation. Back inside the 9th Heaven Road, Jian Wushuang suddenly opened his eyes and a streak of terrifying sword essence swept out from him. Swish! 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 The puppet fighters were all forced backwards by this sudden release of power. Sword heart. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands and focused on sensing of his sword soul, which had changed from its original form and become a dazzling light in the shape of a sword. This golden light was incredibly sharp, giving off the feeling that there was nothing it couldn't cut through. Is this light my sword heart? Jian Wushuang could sense that the power from this light was much stronger than his sword soul. He was so excited now that he had reached a whole new level in sword principle and could finally control his sword just with his heart. Show me your power, sword heart. Jian Wushuang was full of expectations. He moved towards a nearby puppet fighter and struck out. It seemed to be a casual blow, but with the power of his sword heart, it moved towards its target 10 times faster than before. The puppet fighter spotted Jian Wushuang's move and tried to defend itself, but the sword went through its body before it could even move its spear to defend. Jian Wushuang then turned to other puppet fighters, defeating them all, one by one, so fast that they never even had a chance to fight back against him. The 27th floor was conquered. Going back several moments, to the hall in which the experts of the ancient sect were gathered, everyone's sight was currently focused on Jian Wushuang. He was the only challenger that was still inside the 9th Heaven Road. The other challengers had all failed and were sent out. When they saw that Jian Wushuang was finally being forced into a corner, they seemed unsure whether he would be able to pass through the current floor. This is his limit. Palace Master Ming Xin snorted in secret. Xianxia shook his head while watching the scene. He had the same thought. However, in the next moment, to their surprise, Jian Wushuang closed his eyes after merging his 2 original bodies into one, yet he was still able to repel the puppet fighters. Upon seeing this, they quickly understood that Jian Wushuang had gained some insight into sword principle. This boy has gained some insight in sword principle. He received insight at such a critical moment. The experts were rather baffled. Then, right at that very moment, they saw Jian Wushuang open his eyes and defeat a puppet fighter with a single strike. Upon seeing that strike, all the experts, including Xianxia, were amazed. Sword heart. Chapter 675. Sword heart. Sword heart. Inside the large palace, all the experts were currently silent. The weakest among these experts was a superior divine realm expert, who appeared to be so insightful and be able to see through the swordsmanship Jian Wushuang was performing, including the great change that just occurred in his movements. They were also well aware of the reason for the change. It was because they knew it that they understood how incredible it was. How is that possible? Sword heart. It's really sword heart. Even most of the experts in the eternal realm who are good at sword principle have not reached the level of condensing a sword heart. As for divine realm experts, a divine realm expert that can condense a sword heart is already considered to be terrifyingly successful. But this boy, he is currently in the skyscraping realm. A skyscraping realm expert that can condense a sword heart? Even Palace Master Ming Xin, who always frowned at Jian Wushuang, was greatly surprised at the moment. In the firmament territory or even the whole eternal world, a divine realm expert who had condensed a sword heart would count as a super genius. But there were so few of them in the entire eternal world, and the firmament territory had even fewer. How could a kid in the skyscraping realm condense a sword heart? It was unbelievable. But Jian Wushuang did it. He really was just in the skyscraping realm and he was still young, but his swordsmanship had reached the level where he could condense a sword heart. All the experts there were in shock. Like Mo Dao, who was good at meditating on the slaughter Dao and wanted to take Jian Wushuang as his personal disciple. He said hurriedly, "Fortunately, he refused me. With my ability, I was definitely not qualified to be his master." Mo Dao sighed, "Even though I have a profound understanding of the slaughter Dao, my field of vision is rather narrow. I've tried my best but only reached the eternal realm. So, I suppose I would only have wasted his talent at my level. In the entire ancient sect, I'm afraid Xianxia is the only one who is qualified to instruct him." The experts in the palace all looked at Xianxia. "Congratulations, Palace Master Xianxia. You've accepted a good disciple. Xianxia, this little fellow is so talented. With your guidance, he will definitely achieve a lot in the future. A kid in the skyscraping realm actually condensed his sword heart. His understanding of sword principle must be far higher than that of his comprehension of the world Dao and slaughter Dao. It is indeed the best choice for him to be apprenticed to Xianxia. Hearing those compliments, Xianxia smiled softly but said nothing. Even he felt a bit shocked deep down. The boy has given me two big surprises, in rapid succession. They really were two big surprises. The first surprise was the burst of power that Jian Wushuang released. It was far stronger than anyone at the same level. The second was when he condensed his sword heart. Attention, everyone. Although my disciple is still at the skyscraping realm, his battle strength is only slightly weaker than normal divine realm experts. So he is qualified to cultivate my secret skills, Xianxia said plainly. On hearing that, all the experts glanced questioningly at one another. In the ancient sect, there were many secret skills which were restricted because they were closely related to the foundation of the ancient sect and its enormous power. According to rules in the ancient sect, only disciples who reached the divine realm could cultivate these secret skills. However, there was no rule that did not have an exception. Sure, Jian Wushuang was only in the skyscraping realm, but his battle strength was about the same as a common divine realm expert. Also, the amazing talent displayed by Jian Wushuang had completely conquered these experts. Yes. Many experts nodded. Even Palace Master Ming Xin, who was not very fond of Jian Wushuang, still nodded reluctantly. In addition, since he has condensed his sword heart, it won't take long for him to fully grasp the third sword scar. Once he does, he will be qualified to become my personal disciple, at which point I'll take him to cultivate at Sword Mountain, Xianxia continued. Sword Mountain. All the experts' attention was immediately caught by these words, but each of them just nodded. After seeing this, Xianxia smiled satisfactorily and returned to watching the image in front of him. The current image was of Jian Wushuang continuing his journey to the next floor. After condensing his sword heart, Jian Wushuang's battle strength had improved several times. At the same time, his swordsmanship was more profound and delicate, which was completely different than before. After passing through the 27th floor, he appeared on the 28th floor. The 10 puppet fighters on the 28th floor were slightly stronger than those on the 27th floor, but not much stronger. However, with his swordsmanship, Jian Wushuang easily passed through it. The puppet fighters on the 29th floor were able to pressure Jian Wushuang somewhat, but only a little bit. After short struggle, he passed through the 29th floor as well. The battle strength of puppet fighters on the 30th layer was another notch higher than those of the 29th floor. On the 30th floor, Jian Wushuang was forced to use his full strength. By releasing both of his original bodies, maximizing his sword heart, and using the full potential of his body, Jian Wushuang finally managed to pass through this floor. The 31st floor. It was also the final layer of the 9th Heaven Road. Reaching this floor meant that Jian Wushuang had basically reached the peak of the mountain, only one step away from the true summit. However, this last step was as difficult as going to heaven. In the 9th Heaven Road, every 5 floors was considered a small threshold and every 15 floors was regarded as a large milestone. Going from the 30th to the 31st floor meant arriving at the final floor of the 9th Heaven Road, and it was the most difficult floor by far. The 10 puppet fighters on the 31st floor were much stronger than those on the previous floor. Jian Wushuang was even afraid that one of the puppet fighters on the 31st floor could battle with the 10 puppet fighters on the 30th floor. It felt like a single puppet fighter on the 31st floor was equivalent to 10 puppet fighters from the previous floor. The 10 puppet fighters joined hands and worked closely with each other. After only 2 exchanges, both of his original bodies had been defeated. In the end, Jian Wushuang was forced to stop at the 31st floor. This result did not surprise the ancient sect experts at all. The battle strength of each puppet fighter on the 31st floor of the 9th Heaven Road was the same as a peak intermediate divine realm expert. If the 10 puppet fighters worked together, the average advanced divine realm expert might not even be able to win. The boy really is terrific. However, in the end, he is still only in the skyscraping realm, so his battle strength is weaker than an advanced divine realm expert. Being able to make it that far already proves he is incredibly powerful. If he is given a little more time to fully grasp the 4th occult of the world Dao and slaughter Dao, and to cultivate another secret skill, combined with his sword heart, he is likely to pass through the 31st floor. But, for now, it's still too soon. The experts sighed. Chapter 676. Dumbstruck. At the huge martial arts practice field, many of the ancient sect disciples, including the 19 disciples who had come back from the Ninth Heaven Road, were still waiting. As soon as Jian Wushuang walked out of the wormhole, numerous eyes gazed straight at him. He's stayed in the Ninth Heaven Road for so long. Luo Yong and Donga must have made it the farthest, but they didn't stay in the Ninth Heaven Road as long as Jian Wushuang. He did stay for a long time, but it doesn't mean he made it farther in the Ninth Heaven Road. Well, see. Vice Palace Master Ling Yu will announce the result later. I'm afraid Jian Wushuang could still lose his position as an inner disciple. The onlookers discussed unanimously. Jian Wushuang ignored the eyes on him and walked straight towards the other 19 geniuses. Jian Wushuang, Feng looked at him and continued to ask, "How many floors did you pass through? What about you?" Jian Wushuang wasn't in a hurry to answer the question. "I made it through the 20th floor, but was stopped at the 21st floor," Feng said. "I made it to a floor a little higher than you," Jian Wushuang said and smiled. "Oh. Then, you passed the 21st floor?" Feng cast a confused look at him. Since he said he'd passed through more floors, that meant Jian Wushuang must have passed through the 21st floor. Terrific. Feng gave Jian Wushuang a thumbs up. "I thought with my improvements over the past 2 years that I could have caught up to you, but it seems I was too arrogant. It doesn't matter though. I believe I can catch up to you someday." After hearing his words, Jian Wushuang's complexion turned odd. At this time, Vice Palace Master Ling Yu received the results for Jian Wushuang and others who entered the Ninth Heaven Road. "Now, I'm going to announce the results," Ling Yu continued. "Hui Ying, the 15th floor." Ling Yu announced the results according to the order in which the 20 disciples exited the Ninth Heaven Road. With Hui Ying being the weakest among the 20 disciples, it was only natural that he was also the first one to exit the Ninth Heaven Road, which resulted in his name being the first one announced. When he noticed all the strange looks that focused on him, his face turned red from embarrassment and bitterness. Zhong Ying, the 17th floor. Yuan Hai, the 17th floor. Xin Lan, the 17th floor. Other than Hui Ying, who had only passed the 15th floor, the weakest one among the other disciples had passed the 17th floor of Ninth Heaven Road. But, there were only 4 people who were stopped after the 17th floor. Most of the others made it through the 18th or 19th floor. Xia Feng, the 20th floor. Zhun Yi, the 21st floor. Feng, the 20th floor. At this point, the surrounding disciples couldn't help looking at Feng secretly as they marveled at him unanimously. It had only been 2 years since Feng joined the ancient sect. When he first arrived at the ancient sect, his understanding of the Tao was quite poor, but after 2 years, he made an impressive amount of progress that even shocked many of the ancient sect disciples. Feng had made it past the 20th floor, which meant he was much stronger than Hui Ying, so he would be able to keep his position as an inner disciple. Ling Yu continued announcing the names and quickly reached the last few places. Luo Yong, the 24th floor. Donga, the 24th floor. The surrounding disciples listened carefully to the results. When they heard that both Luo Yong and Donga had passed through the 24th floor, these disciples sighed secretly. Among the disciples who had been mentioned previously, the best one had only passed through the 21st floor. However, Luo Yong and Donga both had passed through the 24th floor, which meant they'd skipped 3 levels. It was really admirable. However, they all knew that Luo Yong and Donga were much stronger than the other disciples because they had fully grasped the 4th occult. It was quite normal for them to reach a higher floor. After the results for Luo Yong and Donga were announced, there was only one name left to be announced among the 20 disciples. The one left was Jian Wushuang. A majority of the surrounding disciples really wanted to hear his result. After all, Jian Wushuang had a high aptitude and had drawn a lot of attention ever since he arrived at the ancient sect. He even became apprenticed to Palace Master Xianxia as a nominal disciple, which obviously made him stand out even more. Jian Wushuang, the A. Ling Yu was about to announce the result, but she was suddenly dumbstruck by what she saw. "What's wrong?" Many of the disciples looked at Ling Yu in confusion. How? How is that possible? Ling Yu stared fiercely at the result in disbelief, but the result was sent from the palace and she confirmed it was the final result. After thinking about it, Ling Yu could not help looking at Jian Wushuang with an extremely complicated expression. Then, under the gazes of the other disciples, she slowly announced the result. By her voice betrayed her excitement. Jian Wushuang, the 30th floor. After announcing the result, Ling Yu breathed a sigh of relief. The martial arts practice field was bustling with people discussing the 20 disciples' performance inside the 9th Heaven Road. But when they heard Jian Wushuang's result, everyone immediately stiffened. Luo Yong, who had bronze-colored skin and an air of fierceness that resembled a fierce beast, folded his arms. The burly man stood there with a poker face. He had absolute confidence in his own strength since Head tried his best. He was convinced that no one in this competition could overshadow him. Even though Donga reached the same level of understanding in the Tao as he did and they had both passed through the 24th floor, Luo Yong believed Donga's performance was still inferior to his because he had put up a desperate fight with the 10 puppet fighters on the 25th floor. But, at this moment, he heard Ling Yu say, Jian Wushuang, the 30th floor. What? Luo Yong looked up and immediately glanced at Jian Wushuang. It's been less than 2 years since he came to the ancient sect. How is it possible for him to pass through the 30th floor of the 9th Heaven Road? Excuse me, Vice Palace Master Ling Yu? Did you read it wrong? Maybe he just passed through the 23rd floor? Luo Yong asked abruptly. Donga, Feng, and many of the other disciples who entered the 9th Heaven Road, as well as the other people on the martial arts practice field, were staring at Ling Yu. They all believed Ling Yu had read it wrong. However, Ling Yu shook her head and said with assurance, Jian Wushuang passed the 30th floor, you heard me correctly. Ling Yu confirmed it once again so that no one would doubt it. At hearing that, all the ancient sect disciples became shocked. Chapter 677. Personal Disciple. The drill ground was completely silent. The 30th floor? Almost no one could believe what they heard. Even the two geniuses, Luo Yong and Donga, looked at Jian Wushuang in astonishment. It had been several decades since they arrived at the ancient sect and they were convinced they'd made great progress over the years. But, their results were nothing when compared to Jian Wushuang. They couldn't even be compared. He'd passed through 30 of the 31 floors in the 9th Heaven Road. There was only one floor left for Jian Wushuang to pass. It had only been 2 years since Jian Wushuang joined the ancient sect. Jian Wushuang, you. Feng, who stood beside Jian Wushuang, looked as if he had seen a ghost. He knew that Jian Wushuang had passed through more floors because he had asked him, but he only thought Jian Wushuang got through the 21st floor. So, he was not that discouraged and believed he could catch up to him in the future. But now, he hears that it was the 30th floor, 10 floors ahead of him. In the past 2 years, he thought he had caught up with Jian Wushuang, but now he realized the gap between Jian Wushuang and him had only grown larger, far more than he could handle. The 10-year ancient sect competition came to an end. And, with that, the 10 places for inner disciple had been decided. Both Jian Wushuang and Feng kept their positions as inner disciples and only Huiying lost his position and became an outer disciple. However, even though the sect competition had come to an end, there was still a heated discussion going on about Jian Wushuang. It was a hot topic among the disciples at first, but the heated discussions finally began to die down after several days. Jian Wushuang brushed aside those voices. After the sect competition finished, he immediately headed to Sword Palace and began meditating in front of the stone tablet in front of Sword Tower. Jian Wushuang had already grasped the second of the 3 sword scars left by Xianxia and had become his nominal disciple. As for the third scar, the third sword scar fused all 9 sword movements from the first sword scar into one, which was 1,000 times more difficult than the second sword scar. As Jian Wushuang was meditating, his cultivation in sword principle had increasingly improved. It didn't mean that he couldn't grasp the third sword scar, but he had no idea where to begin. It had only been recently that he finally condensed his sword heart. Now that his sword heart was condensed, he looked at the 3 sword scars again. But, now they looked completely different to him. Previously, He couldn't even figure out where to start while looking at the third sword scar. But now, with just a simple glimpse, he suddenly felt inspired. Half a month later. Crash! A sword light flew out and rushed through the empty space ahead. It seemed to move without making noise or disturbing the surroundings, but right after the sword light passed through the area, there was a series of explosions. Boom! Boom! This sword seemed to be a combination of many occults, which resulted in terribly enormous power. When performed, it was even more powerful than the superior rank 3 secret skill he created, Violet Devastation Sword Skill. What a frightening sword strike! Jian Wushuang raised the heart-killing sword in his hand, looking at a series of overwhelming swordsmanship movements in front, with his eyes displaying a slight shade of shock. This sword strike was so frightening that Jian Wushuang even believed it was much more powerful than a rank 4 secret skill. It was definitely a powerful killing move. Have you grasped it? Suddenly, a soft floating voice sounded beside him. Jian Wushuang looked next to him and realized that Xianxia had suddenly appeared by his side. Master! Jian Wushuang immediately bowed and said. Xianxia stepped forward slowly, then stopped less than a meter away from Jian Wushuang. When you condensed your sword heart on the 9th Heaven Road, I knew that it wouldn't take you long to grasp the 3 sword scars IFD behind, but it's only been half a month. A mild smile grew on Xianxi's face as he continued. I made a rule, if anyone below the Eternal Realm fully grasps my 3 sword scars, they can become my personal disciple. Since you've succeeded, from this day on you will be my 4th personal disciple. The 4th personal disciple. It seemed to appeal Jian Wushuang. In the 2 years he spent in the ancient sect, he'd never heard that Xianxia had other personal disciples. Many disciples of Sword Palace said that there was nobody who had fully comprehended all 3 of the sword scars left by Xianxia, but now, you do have 3 senior brothers, but they have already left the ancient sect and set off on new adventures. If possible, you will meet them one day, Xianxia said and smiled. Understood. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly, filled with anticipation at the bottom of his heart. There were very high standards for becoming one of Xianxi's personal disciples. The other 3 senior brothers should all be extraordinary, so he was looking forward to seeing their abilities someday. Follow me, Xianxia said. Xianxia led Jian Wushuang to Sword Tower. Only Jian Wushuang and Xianxia were left inside Sword Tower. Now that it's only the 2 of us, I have something I want to ask you, Xianxia said while looking at Jian Wushuang. Master, please ask. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. Earlier, at Firmament Territory Feast, I realized you must have received a remarkable opportunity in the ancient world. If not, how is it possible for you to reach your current level and even acquire the doppelganger secret skill in less than 40 years? Xianxia said. Yes. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. After seeing his performance at Firmament Territory Feast, even the experts from every sect could tell that he had received an extraordinary opportunity, let alone Xianxia, so Jian Wushuang could not deny it. At that time, we didn't have any relationship, so I never asked you about it. After all, everyone has had their own opportunities and I won't interfere with it. But now, since you are my personal disciple, I have to ask about your previous experience, Xianxia said. Jian Wushuang also understood. As a master, one must have a certain understanding of his disciples' previous experiences. I did have a somewhat outstanding opportunity in the ancient world and I was even lucky enough to be instructed by a super expert, Jian Wushuang said directly. Of course, the super expert he referred to was undoubtedly Emperor Xiao. Ah, I see. Xianxia seemed to realize something, then he immediately continued. Do you have a secret skill for body reshaping? Your foundation seems extraordinarily strong. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded again. I acquired a body reshaping technique called immortality in the ancient world, so my body should be quite strong. As for my foundation, I have to thank the expert's guidance for that. Jian Wushuang didn't intend to reveal anything about the heavenly creation skill, which was his biggest secret. So, the only thing he could do was to place the blame on Emperor Xiao. Immortality secret skill. Xianxia raised his eyebrows but didn't continue asking about it. As a master, he only needed to know what Jian Wushuang had experienced. There was no need to go into detail about it. Chapter 678. vibration. Everyone has their own unique opportunities. The fact that you, a little fellow from the ancient world, received such incredible an opportunity, just means that you are very fortunate and blessed, Xianxia smiled. Now that I know you've acquired the immortality secret skill, I won't ask about it anymore. You can go back first. I need to prepare some secret skills which are suitable for you. In addition, I will help you apply to cultivate at Sword Mountain. Sword Mountain. It seemed to appeal to Jian Wushuang. On the first day he arrived at Sword Palace, he heard about Sword Mountain from Zhu Lai. Sword Mountain was unique to Sword Palace and it was demanding to cultivate there. Sword Mountain was almost a legend in Sword Palace and few people could cultivate there, but apparently, Jian Wushuang had the qualifications now. I'll take my leave then. Jian Wushuang said, then he turned around and left. As Xianxia watched Jian Wushuang leaving, an enigmatic smile appeared on his face. My disciple is very cautious. His opportunity was by no means as simple as what he said. He is hiding a very big secret, but he won't even tell me about it. Xianxia murmured, but didn't blame his disciple. On the contrary, a strong appreciation could be seen flickering in his eyes. Since it was a big secret, it was better if fewer people knew about it. If Jian Wushuang told him the secret easily, it would definitely disappoint him. The little fellow is superb, both in talent and wisdom. He is a real diamond in the rough. Once he is polished, he will be able to achieve a lot in the future. As for the polishing, it will not be that difficult. The very moment he became my personal disciple, the polishing had already started. Haha, if Cloud Seer's Guard, the Immortal Dynasty, and the Boundless Demon Sect knew that I've taken Jian Wushuang as my personal disciple, I'm afraid the three magnates would explode. Not long after Jian Wushuang grasped the 3 sword scars left by Xianxia, the news that Xianxia had taken him as his personal disciple had spread throughout the ancient sect. At that time, the whole ancient sect was in shock. The ancient sect disciples were aghast. Since Xianxia was one of the oldest, most mysterious, and most powerful palace masters, everyone dreamed of being apprenticed to him. It was a pity though, the requirement for becoming his disciple was just too demanding. After so many years, no one had met the standard set by Xianxia, and these ancient sect disciples didn't know that Xianxia already had other personal disciples. In their eyes, Xianxia had finally accepted a personal disciple. Immediately after that, countless ancient sect disciples began to admire Jian Wushuang for having such a powerful master whom everyone dreamed of apprenticing to. As for experts in the ancient sect, they remained calm after hearing this news. They knew that Jian Wushuang had condensed his sword heart and that the 3rd sword scar would no longer be a challenge for him. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang would be able to grasp the 3rd sword scar and became the personal disciple of Xianxia. However, they never expected him to succeed as quickly as he did and only use half a month to comprehend it. The news of Xianxia accepting a personal disciple didn't just shock the ancient sect though. It even created a great disturbance within the entire Firmament territory. One of the 3 magnates of the Firmament territory, Cloud Seer's Guard. At the center of a huge immortal mansion inside the Cloud Seer's Guard sect, dozens of elders had gathered, led by a gray-haired and barefoot elder with a baby face. This barefoot elder was Yunfan, the great elder of Cloud Seer's Guard. I just heard news from the ancient sect that Xianxia accepted a personal disciple today, and the disciple is the well-known Jian Wushuang. Yunfan looked rather grim. Normally, if someone else accepted a personal disciple, it had nothing to do with him or Cloud Seer's Guard. But it was wholly different when Xianxia accepted a personal disciple. All of Cloud Seer's Guard attached great importance to it when Xianxia accepted a personal disciple. After hearing what Yunfan said, these elders looked grim as well. I found out some information about Jian Wushuang. He is a peerless genius from the ancient world who just recently appeared in Firmament Territory Feast 2 years ago, Yunfan continued. Although he came from the ancient world, he gave an impressive performance at Firmament Territory Feast. At that time, he was already incredibly powerful. He had spent less than 40 years cultivating, and he had only been in the skyscraping realm for less than a year. He is only slightly inferior when compared with Gong Chao. After hearing that, all the elders were shocked. Gong Chao was currently a disciple of their Cloud Seer's Guard. They were all aware of his talent and strength. However, Jian Wushuang, who cultivated for less than 40 years and came from the ancient world, was evenly matched with Gong Chao. It was completely unbelievable. After Jian Wushuang arrived at the ancient sect, he quickly demonstrated his amazing talent in sword principle and became apprenticed to Xianxia as a nominal disciple. Not long after ago, he took part in their sect competition and managed to pass through 30 floors of the 9th Heaven Road in one go. It's truly incredible. Yun Fan clasped his hands. The 30th floor of the 9th Heaven Road. These elders marveled at such a result. They all knew about the 9th Heaven Road, which was composed of 31 floors. It was unimaginable that a kid in the skyscraping realm could pass the 30th floor. According to the information we have, Jian Wushuang is still in the skyscraping realm, but he has already condensed his sword heart. After condensing his sword heart, it only took him half a month to comprehend the third sword scar left by Xianxia. After that, Xianxia agreed to accept him as a personal disciple, Yun Fan said, then remained silent for a while. After that moment of silence, he raised his head and glanced around with a very grim look in his eyes. Everyone, all of you know how terrifying Xianxia is. And it's not just because of his own strength. The most important part is his ability to instruct his disciples. Before Jian Wushuang, he already had 3 personal disciples, whose achievements are known by all of us. These elders of Cloud Sea Asgard also stayed silent. The 3 personal disciples Xianxia instructed? Immediately, 3 figures appeared in their minds. At the mere thought of them, they all trembled in fear. Xianxia. He is a complete and utter monster, so the disciples he instructs will definitely be monstrous as well. His first 3 personal disciples have made incredibly fast progress. I don't even need to comment on it. You all understand how terrifying the 3 of them are. Any one of them is strong enough to threaten the entire Cloud Sea Asgard. And now, Jian Wushuang, who spent less than 40 years cultivating, possesses a strength that is almost equal to Gong Chao, and condensed his sword heart while still in the skyscraping realm, probably has even higher talent than those other 3 personal disciples. Chapter 679. Kill. What Yun Fan said shocked the experts of Cloud Sea Asgard. After hearing his words, they all realized that Jian Wushuang's talent was far better than Xianxia's previous 3 personal disciples. Damn it! Jian Wushuang should have been our disciple. That's Xianxia's fault. With a resentful face, Shi Qianhan clasped his hands. Previously, during the Firmament Territory Feast, he had invited Jian Wushuang to join Cloud Sea Asgard. However, Jian Wushuang refused. At that moment, Xianxia's doppelganger cut him in 2 and made him become a laughingstock. He had already been mad at him, but he was even angrier now that he knew Jian Wushuang had become Xianxia's personal disciple. The ancient sect is already very strong, Yun Fan continued. We can't let it continue to grow. We also can't let Jian Wushuang follow in his senior brother's footsteps. He is still young and not that strong yet, so we need to kill him as soon as possible. When they heard that, all the elders were shocked. It was common to assassinate the geniuses from the other sects in the Firmament Territory. If a sect had some excellent geniuses, they would usually become a target and other sects would try to kill them. And, since Cloud Sea Asgard was the #1 sect in the Firmament Territory, they had a lot of pride. They always looked down on these sneaky actions. Even when the geniuses from the other 2 magnates, the Immortal Dynasty and the Boundless Demon Sect, were a threat to them, they still never attempted to assassinate them. But now, Great Elder Yun Fan was planning to kill Jian Wushuang, which showed how much he feared Xianxia and Jian Wushuang. The threat from Xianxia's personal disciples was far more terrifying than the geniuses from the Immortal Dynasty and Boundless Demon Sect. Jian Wushuang must die. But we need to do it secretly, in a way that the ancient sect won't discover. After all, it's hard to deal with their palace master, Xianxia, Yun Fan said solemnly. As soon as Yun Fan's words faded, an elder instantly suggested, the Eternal Zone will start soon. That will be a good opportunity. Jian Wushuang is very talented, so he will definitely enter the Eternal Zone. There will be plenty of chances for us to kill him. The Eternal Zone. Yun Fan intrigued and nodded. I would have forgotten about that if you hadn't mentioned it. The Eternal Zone happens every century. The next time will be in a few years. If we're going to take part in the Eternal Zone, we need to start preparing for it as soon as possible. The other elders all nodded to express their agreement. The Eternal Zone was not only a good opportunity for the disciples, but also for the elders in the Eternal Realm. For instance, Yun Fan received an incredible opportunity in the Eternal Zone that greatly increased his strength and allowed him to become a great elder. As for Jian Wushuang, when the Eternal Zone begins, we can look for a chance to kill him. At that same moment, in the Immortal Dynasty, Jian Wushuang has become Xianxi's personal disciple. The kid has condensed his sword heart while still in the skyscraping realm. That's already incredible. What kind of monster is Xianxi going to train? The ancient sect is only one of the top sects, but since Xianxi has already trained 3 monsters, it has already surpassed the 3 magnates. Now he is planning to train a 4th disciple. We can't let Jian Wushuang get stronger, otherwise the ancient sect will be superior to us. The Boundless Demon Sect. We must kill Jian Wushuang before he becomes stronger, but we can't let Xianxi find out. Otherwise, if he gets mad, no one knows what would happen. Think of a way to frame Cloud Seer's Guard or the Immortal Dynasty. Simply put, Jian Wushuang must die, but we can't be the ones to kill him. When the 3 magnates, Cloud Seer's Guard, the Immortal Dynasty, and the Boundless Demon Sect, found out that Jian Wushuang had become Xianxi's personal disciples, they all acted calmly on the surface, but they secretly made plans. As Xianxi said, the 3 magnates couldn't calm down after they heard that Jian Wushuang had become his personal disciple. However, they were scared of Xianxi, so none of them dared to do anything out in the open. The ancient sect looked the same as always. The second day after Jian Wushuang became Xianxi's personal disciple, Xianxi took him to Sword Mountain. Sword Mountain was inside the ancient sect. There were numerous towering mountains in the ancient sect, and Sword Mountain was hidden among them. It was in the center, surrounded by several towering mountains, so it didn't stand out when compared to the others. When Jian Wushuang saw it, it seemed shorter than others and he didn't notice anything special about it. However, when he got close, he realized this mountain was covered by a restriction that stretched from the bottom to the top. Follow me. Xianxi launched several palms at the restriction to open it, then they continued towards Sword Mountain. Even after they arrived at the top of Sword Mountain, Jian Wushuang still didn't sense anything special about it. It was just like a normal mountain. However, once they entered a cave mansion, Jian Wushuang instantly sensed an incredible sword essence that filled the whole cave mansion. This sword essence was profound and seemed to encompass everything. What a powerful sword essence! This sword essence includes many different aspects of sword principle. It's like a sea that was created by hundreds of rivers. Jian Wushuang thought secretly. When he arrived at the core of the cave mansion, Jian Wushuang, look at those stone walls, Xianxi said with a smile. Jian Wushuang immediately looked at the stone walls and his expression changed abruptly. There were lots of Dao characters on it, but all of them looked exactly the same. However, Jian Wushuang had condensed his sword heart, so he looked more closely at the Dao characters. At that point, he realized that they were all unique. This is. When Jian Wushuang looked at the Dao character in front of him, it looked like a simple word at first, but it slowly transformed into a complete and extreme sword principle. Chapter 680. Sword Mountain. It was a very advanced sword principle. Since Jian Wushuang only had superficial knowledge, he was unable to comprehend most of it. Very profound. Jian Wushuang shook his head and looked at some of the other Dao characters, but they were also too profound for him to understand. Finally, Xianxi began to explain. Sword principle is quite broad and profound, and you've just recently condensed your sword heart, which is only the starting line for truly cultivating sword principle. Sword principle is very complicated. Because of that, it is divided into 72 concepts which are like 72 rivers joining to form a sea. If you only understand one concept, you can only comprehend a tiny part of sword principle. So, if you want to truly comprehend sword principle, you have to completely understand all 72 concepts. For now, you still have a long journey ahead of you, Xianxi said and smiled. After hearing this, Jian Wushuang shrugged, but he didn't feel depressed. He was still very young, so he had time to cultivate and meditate on sword principle. As of now, he had only just reached the most basic requirement. However, if he had enough time, it would be very possible for him to comprehend all of them. There are 72 Dao characters in this cave mansion, and every one of them represents the pinnacle in a concept of sword principles. Every Dao character represents one of the essences of sword principle. So now, what you need to do is try your best to comprehend them and improve your understanding of sword principle. Compared to cultivating on your own, this will be easier and more effective, Xianxia said. After hearing that, Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up. If he tried to cultivate sword principle on his own, even with Xianxi's guidance, there would still be a limit on how much he could improve. However, if he had the essences that make up sword principle as a reference, it would be a different story. These 72 Dao characters encompassed all the different concepts of sword principle and broke them down to their most basic form. Being able to use this would be the same as taking an incredibly difficult task and breaking it into numerous simple tasks. It might be impossible for him to complete such a difficult task. But, if they were broken up into numerous simple tasks, he could work on them one step at a time. At the same time, he would be slowly improving his comprehension of sword principle. Doing it this way made it much easier to handle. Is this Sword Mountain? Jian Wushuang was very excited as he clasped his hands. He knew the requirement for entering Sword Mountain was very high, so he expected it to be an exceptional place for cultivating. To his great surprise, it was much more incredible than he expected because it was tailor-made for warriors who cultivated sword principle. As long as he meditated on these 72 Dao characters, his comprehension of sword principle would definitely improve. Although the requirement to enter is high, there is no time limit once you enter. You can stay here for as long as you want. Also, there are a few things I would like to give to you, Xianxia said. Jian Wushuang looked at him. Previously, Xianxia had told him that he would apply for some resources to give him. The first is a secret skill. Xianxia said, secret skills are very powerful, but the cultivation requirements are also very high. Most secret skills that can improve physical power require the warrior to be in the divine realm. However, you are only in the skyscraping realm, so you can't use those skills yet. However, I will give some that you can cultivate and are useful for you. The first secret skill is a sword art. Xianxia said and then handed a jade slip to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang accepted it and took a quick glance at it. Boundless Heaven Sword Art. Jian Wushuang felt a rush of excitement in his heart. This jade slip recorded the Boundless Heaven Sword Art, which was a very powerful secret skill. There was a total of 7 sword movements and the power was quite terrifying. Moreover, the Boundless Heaven Sword Art utilized both sword principle and Dao comprehension, which made it a very versatile skill. As long as he reached the minimum requirement, he could even use the Boundless Heaven Sword Art with either the World Dao or Slaughter Dao. This secret skill is different from a self-created one. Those can be used to attack, defend, and movement since self-created skills will suit you perfectly. However, secret skills such as sword arts, saber techniques, and stick technique are killing moves. If you look at the Boundless Heaven Sword Art, it contains 7 sword moves that are all killing moves. It requires tremendous spiritual power to use them, but the power will be greater than a self-created skill. On top of that, you've already reached the requirement for learning the first move, Xianxia said. I've reached the requirement for learning the first move. Jian Wushuang was shocked but quickly understood the reason. The last sword scar from the 3 that Master has left is the requirement. Yes. Xianxia smiled and nodded. That sword imitates the first move of the Boundless Heaven Sword Art. However, it is only an imitation, so it can't compare with the real first move. After hearing that, Jian Wushuang was stunned. He had comprehended and practiced the 3rd sword scar. Its power was already terrifying and much powerful than the superior rank 3 secret skill that he created, Violet Star Destruction. Since it was only an imitation of the first move of the Boundless Heaven Sword Art, its power would be far weaker than the original. How powerful would the first move be? The Boundless Heaven Sword Art can improve your offensive power, but the most important thing for a warrior is to protect themselves, so I also acquired a protective skill for you, the Dragon Blood Secret Skill. It is a skill that will help you escape by increasing your speed for a short time. However, It burns your spiritual power to achieve this, so this skill should only be used to escape, not to fight. You should study it carefully. Xianxia handed the second jade slip to Jian Wushuang. It requires you to burn your spiritual power. Jian Wushuang was shocked. Spiritual power was the core of a warrior's power. To burn their spiritual power? It was very unlikely that anyone in the eternal world would dare to do that. Finally, I have one more secret skill, a very unique skill, Xianxia said as he handed a golden scroll to Jian Wushuang. This scroll was a golden jade slip that gave off an ancient aura. Jian Wushuang took it and quickly skimmed through it. Universal Tao Scripture.